She had worked in that mansion for 8 months. 8 months of scrubbing floors that cost more than her car. 8 months of pressing his shirts so sharp they could cut glass. 8 months of yes, ma'am, and no, sir, and invisible. Nobody looked at her. Nobody said her name. She was just the help. But on the afternoon his fiancée flew to Paris, and the house went quiet for the first time in months. Something inside Diane Wells finally broke loose. She put on the dress she hadn't worn in 2 years. The deep wine red one she bought the year her mother passed. The one still folded at the bottom of her bag like a secret she was ashamed to keep. She turned the music up. She danced. She didn't know he was standing in the doorway. She didn't know that cold, unreachable billionaire, the one who had never once looked her in the eye, was watching her like a man who had just remembered something he thought he'd lost forever. And she had absolutely no idea that what happened next would not only change her life. It would destroy everything he thought he wanted. Because Diane Wells had a secret. Not the kind you stumble onto by accident. The kind that had been buried deliberately, carefully, by someone who had every reason to keep her small. By the time the truth came out, nothing in that mansion would ever be the same. Not him. Not her. And certainly not the woman who smiled and called herself his future wife. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The alarm on Diane's phone went off at 5:15 every morning. Not because she needed it to. Her body had already learned to wake before the sound came, trained by years of early mornings and the quiet kind of survival that nobody sees and nobody applauds. She would lie still for exactly 30 seconds, eyes open in the dark, listening to the silence of the servants' quarters the way a doctor listens to a chest, searching for something wrong before she rose to face another day. The room was small. A single bed with a firm mattress pushed against the wall. A narrow wardrobe, a wooden chair she used as a nightstand. There was one window that looked out onto the side of the property where the delivery trucks came. Not the manicured garden. Not the pool. Not the fountain that ran even in winter. Just the concrete path where things arrived and no one lingered. She was 39 years old. If you had met Diane Wells 10 years earlier, before the loss, before the unraveling, before life handed her a series of blows she never saw coming, you would have met a woman with plans. She had been 3 semesters away from her education degree when her mother, Ruth, was diagnosed. Diane came home to Atlanta to help. She told herself it would be temporary. Most things we tell ourselves are. Ruth fought hard and Ruth fought beautifully, but the illness was harder. The medical bills arrived the way bad news always does, quietly at first, then all at once. Diane left school. She took work wherever she could find it. Cleaning, catering, front desk, laundry services. She told herself each position was a bridge to somewhere better. After Ruth passed, she kept moving because stillness felt too close to grief. She had ended up at the Reeves estate through an agency 8 months ago. The pay was better than anything she'd held before. The hours were long, the expectations were exacting, and the woman of the house made it clear from day one that warmth was not included in the arrangement. But Diane had learned to live without warmth. She had become very good at it. By 5:45 she was dressed, hair pulled back, black uniform pressed, white collar straight. She descended the back staircase that the staff used, narrow, uncarpeted, lit by a single bulb, and entered the kitchen. The main kitchen was cathedral-sized, all white marble and brushed steel, with appliances that cost more than most people's annual salaries. She moved through it the way she moved through everything in that house. Efficiently. Quietly. Like someone who understood that her presence was tolerated, not welcomed. Coffee first. The machine was programmed, but Callum Reeves preferred his poured at a specific temperature and presented at exactly 7 a.m. She had learned this in the first week. She had learned everything in the first week because learning fast was how you stayed. At 6:10, she began the morning sweep of the ground floor. The marble in the foyer was cold under her feet even through her shoes. She worked room by room, dusting, straightening, aligning. The living room with its white linen sofas and walls of curated art. The formal dining room that was never actually used for dining. The study that smelled of cedar and paper and something she could never quite name. She was wiping down the window ledge in the hallway when she caught her reflection in the glass. She paused. Just for a second. The woman looking back had good bones. Her mother always said that. High cheekbones, deep-set eyes, a mouth that curved naturally upward even when she wasn't smiling. But the eyes in that reflection were tired. Not just from sleep. From something slower and harder to fix. She turned away before the thought could settle. By 7, the coffee was ready. She carried it on a silver tray to the foot of the main staircase, then paused, hearing footsteps above. Callum Reeves descended exactly as he always did, suit on, phone in hand, expression closed like a door no one had been given a key to. He was 43. Built like a man who had never stopped working, not physically, but with a sharpness to him, an economy of movement that suggested he considered every step before he took it. His tech firm, Reeves Capital, had made him the kind of wealthy that people whispered about rather than spoke aloud. He had been on the cover of 3 national magazines in the past 2 years. In every photo, he looked the same, composed, contained, unreachable. He took the coffee from the tray without looking at her. She said, "Good morning, Mr. Reeves." He said nothing. She returned to the kitchen. This was how every morning began. Simone Archer appeared at 8:45, which was early for her. She swept into the kitchen in a silk robe the color of champagne, phone pressed to her ear, gesturing for Diane to start the espresso machine without breaking stride. Simone was 31, tall, angular, with the kind of beauty that announced itself before she entered a room. She had been a fashion model since she was 19, and she wore her looks the way some people wear weapons, with precision, and with the full awareness of the damage they could do. She ended her call and looked at Diane the way she always looked at her. Like something she hadn't fully decided whether to keep. "Did you repress my gray blazer?" "Yes, ma'am. It's in your dressing room. The seams were soft last time. I told you I need sharp seams. I pressed it twice this morning, ma'am." Simone looked at her for a beat too long, then picked up her espresso cup without another word. She scrolled through her phone. Diane stood at the counter waiting to be dismissed. "The Johannesburg trip," Simone said finally. "I leave Thursday. I need my whole summer wardrobe steamed, packed, and ready by Wednesday night." "Not Thursday morning. Wednesday night." "Yes, ma'am. And don't fold the silk pieces." "I don't know why I have to keep saying that." "I understand, ma'am." Simone looked up. Something flickered in her expression. Not cruelty exactly, but something colder than indifference. The look of a woman who had decided long ago that certain people existed to serve, and the only question worth asking was whether they were doing it adequately. "You can go," she said. Diane went. She walked back down the hallway, past the framed art and the tall windows, past the life that belonged to other people, and she kept her face still and her hands steady, and she did not let herself feel it until she was back in the kitchen alone, standing at the sink, water running cold over her wrists. She breathed. She counted to 10 the way her mother taught her. And then she got back to work. The days in that house had a rhythm. Not a comfortable one, but a predictable one, and Diane had learned to find a kind of steadiness in predictability. Mornings belonged to preparation. Afternoons belonged to maintenance. Evenings belonged to invisibility, slipping between rooms while Callum and Simone occupied the spaces she had already cleaned, made perfect, and vacated. She rarely thought about what she wanted. Wanting felt like a luxury she hadn't earned yet. But there were moments. Small ones. When she was alone in the laundry room with music playing low from her phone, and she caught herself swaying without meaning to. When she was polishing the long dining table and the afternoon light came through the south windows at just the right angle and made everything look like something from a painting. When she passed the study and caught the smell of cedar and paper and whatever that unnamed thing was and thought, without meaning to, this could have been a different life. She had a photograph of her mother tucked into the inner pocket of her uniform. Ruth Wells at 50, standing in front of the small flower shop she had run for 11 years on the east side of Atlanta, smiling with her whole face, the way only women who have truly earned their joy know how to smile. Diane touched it sometimes, just briefly, when the days got heavy. Not to grieve. just to remember that she came from someone who stood in her own light. That reminder was the only thing some days that kept her standing upright. What none of them in that house knew, not Simone, not the other staff, not even Callum Reeves himself, was that standing upright had always been the least of what Diane Wells was capable of. The truth of who she really was had been kept from her deliberately, buried by someone with the means and the motive to keep it there. But buried things eventually always rise. Wednesday came like a held breath finally released. Diane stood in the marble foyer at 9:45 a.m., watching two airport-bound suitcases disappear through the front door. Pink. Oversized. Tagged with Simone's initials in gold. Behind them came the woman herself, white sunglasses, red mouth, the kind of composed elegance that takes 2 hours and a team to produce. She paused at the door and turned back, and for just a moment Diane thought she might say something human. "If the house isn't exactly as I left it when I return," Simone said evenly, "we're going to have a very different conversation than the ones we've been having." She didn't wait for a response. The door closed. The car pulled away. Diane stood in the foyer for a long moment after the sound of the engine faded. Then she exhaled. It was the kind of exhale that starts somewhere deep in the chest, the kind that comes after you've been holding something tight for so long that releasing it feels almost like grief. She didn't move right away. She just stood there and let the silence of the house settle around her like something she hadn't been offered in a very long time. Peace. By mid-morning, Callum had left for a board meeting downtown. Marcus Osei, his executive assistant, had texted ahead to confirm the schedule. No return expected before 6. The other staff, the groundskeeper, the weekend housekeeper, were off-site. The house was hers. She cleaned steadily through the morning, working from the top floor down, the way she always did. But there was a lightness to it today. No ears listening for the click of heels. No voice calling her name from 2 rooms away like it was a correction. She worked and she breathed and she let herself exist in the space without apology. By early afternoon, she had finished everything on her list. She stood in the hallway outside the laundry room and looked down at herself. The black uniform, the white collar, the apron tied twice around the back the way Simone preferred. She thought about the photograph of her mother in her pocket. She thought about Ruth's flower shop, always smelling of roses and something green and alive. She thought about the woman she used to be before life got heavy enough to change the shape of her. She went to her room. At the bottom of her travel bag, beneath a folded cardigan and a paperback she'd been trying to finish for 3 months, was the dress. Wine red, deep and warm, with soft sleeves that moved when she moved and a hem that fell just below the knee. She had bought it the autumn after her mother passed, in a moment of something she couldn't fully explain, grief and stubbornness, braided together into an act of self-preservation. She had worn it once, to a friend's birthday dinner, and then folded it away when the days got harder. Keeping it felt like keeping a promise to herself that she hadn't broken yet. She held it for a moment. Then she put it on. She stood in front of the narrow mirror on the back of her door and looked at herself for the first time in longer than she could remember. Not inventory. Not inspection. Just looking. The dress fit exactly as it always had. The wine red made her skin glow warm. Her hair, freed from its tight bun, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. She looked like Diane. Not the maid. Not the help. Not the woman with the steady hands and the invisible face. Just Diane. She walked out of her room and down the hallway to the kitchen, and she did something she almost never did in that house. She turned the radio on. Not low and cautious. All the way up. Neo soul and rhythm and bass filled the kitchen like warm water filling a cold room, and Diane Wells stood in the middle of the marble floor in her wine-red dress, and she began to dance. She was not a trained dancer. She had never taken a class, never performed. But she had grown up in a house where her mother danced in the kitchen on Saturday mornings, where music was something that lived in the body rather than the ears, where moving freely was a form of prayer. She had that in her bones. She had always had that. She moved through the kitchen and into the hallway, one hand trailing the wall, her feet light on the marble, her eyes closed. She wasn't thinking about anything. Not the house, not Simone, Not the years of yes ma'am and the cold mornings and the photograph in the pocket of the uniform she'd left folded on her bed. She was just here, just present, just alive in a way that the past 8 months had slowly tried to sand away. She drifted toward the main staircase, still moving, still lost in it. She climbed the stairs slowly, dancing her way up, one hand on the banister, the music rising behind her from the kitchen below. She turned down the corridor toward the master wing, not with any particular intention, just following the light, the way the afternoon sun came in long warm bars through the tall windows at the end of the hall and made the whole space look like something from a dream. She pushed open the door to the master bedroom. The room was enormous. High ceilings, a bed like a landscape, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the garden, and beyond that, the whole city spread out in the late afternoon haze. The light in here was extraordinary, amber and gold, the kind of light that makes everything it touches look a little more important than it is. Diane walked to the center of the room. She closed her eyes. She danced. She didn't hear the front door. She didn't hear the footsteps on the stairs. She didn't know the board meeting had ended 90 minutes early. She didn't know the car had pulled into the drive. She didn't know that Callum Reeves had heard the music from the foyer and followed it the way you follow something you can't quite name, but can't quite leave alone either. She didn't know he was standing in the doorway. His hand was braced against the door frame. His jacket was over his arm. His phone was in his pocket for the first time in hours, forgotten. He had come up the stairs slowly, following the music, telling himself he was simply investigating an unexpected sound in his own home. But he had stopped moving when he reached the door. He had gone still in the way that people go still when they stumble onto something that asks something of them. He watched her. Not the way he watched anything else in his life, with assessment and calculation, and the practiced distance of a man who had learned early that emotion was a liability. He watched her the way he had not watched anything in a very long time, with something open, with something that had not been open in years. She spun once, her dress moving around her like something alive. She laughed softly to herself. The sound hit him somewhere behind the sternum. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He stood in the doorway of his own bedroom and watched a woman he had walked past for 8 months without truly seeing, and something in him shifted so quietly and so completely that he almost didn't notice it had happened at all. And then she opened her eyes. She saw him. The sound that left her throat was barely a word. Her body froze mid-turn, hands still slightly lifted, the music still playing faintly from 2 floors below. Her eyes went wide and her face went through a series of things: shock, horror, the specific shame of being caught in joy, and then she was backing up, bumping into the edge of the bed, apologies already forming on her lips before she'd taken a full breath. "Mr. Reeves, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you were. I never meant to be in here." He held up one hand. Not sharp, not dismissive, just quiet. "Stop," he said. She stopped. He looked at her for a long moment, and something moved across his face. Something she hadn't seen there before. Something that wasn't cold. "You were dancing beautifully," he said. She stared at him. What?" "I said you were dancing beautifully." He said it plainly, the way he said everything, without decoration. But there was nothing plain about the way he was looking at her. "I'm sorry I interrupted." Diane's hands were trembling. She pressed them flat against her thighs. "I'll change and go back to work. I'll clean up the kitchen, the music." "You don't have to." She blinked. "The music is fine," he said. "The room is fine." He stepped inside, just barely, just enough. "I've worked in this house for 4 years. I don't think I've ever heard music in it." She didn't know what to do with that. She didn't know what to do with any of this. He was looking at her in a way that nobody in this house had ever looked at her. Not past her, not through her. At her. Directly and without apology, with something in his eyes that looked uncomfortably close to recognition. "I should still go," she whispered. He nodded slowly. "All right." But he didn't move from the doorway. And then, quietly, almost to himself, "You looked like yourself just now. In a way I haven't seen you look before." She had no answer to that. She walked past him, keeping close to the wall, and slipped out into the hallway. She descended the stairs without looking back. She turned off the radio. She stood in the center of the kitchen in her wine-red dress, and she put both hands flat on the cool marble counter and breathed. Her heart was not quiet. Her heart was doing something she hadn't given it permission to do. She pressed it down. She pressed all of it down. She told herself it meant nothing, that he was simply surprised to find the help behaving unexpectedly, and that tomorrow everything would return to its correct arrangement. She was the maid. He was the billionaire. The hallway between those two facts was not a hallway anyone should try to walk. She went to her room and changed back into her uniform. She folded the wine-red dress carefully and put it back at the bottom of her bag. She told herself she was done with it. She was wrong. The next morning came slowly, cautious the way mornings are after something has shifted. Diane was at the coffee machine at 6:55, as always. Her hands moved through the routine without instruction. The grind, the measure, the tray, the linen napkin folded in thirds. Her face was composed. Her uniform was perfect. She had been composing her face and perfecting her uniform for years. She was very good at it. But when she carried the tray into the study at 7 and placed it on the desk, she did not look at him. She said, "Good morning, Mr. Reeves," and began to step back, and he said, "Good morning, Diane." She stopped. She turned, just slightly. "Good morning, sir." "You don't have to call me sir," he said, not looking up from his desk. "You never have to call me that." She didn't know how to answer. She stood still. "You look tired," he added. This time he did look up. His eyes moved over her face with a directness that was different from Simone's inspection, which was always looking for fault, and different from the blankness he usually wore. It was simply observation. Honest and unhurried. "I sleep fine," she said. "That wasn't what I said." A pause. "I said you look tired." "That's not the same as not sleeping." Diane looked at him for one moment longer than was safe. "I'll let you work," she said, and left. She spent the morning on the second floor, moving through the guest rooms, the corridor, the linen closet. Her mind kept circling back to the study, to the way he had said her name that morning, and then to the afternoon before, to the doorway. To the way he had stood there watching her with something open in his face that she had not expected from a man who kept everything so deliberately closed. She told herself she was reading into things. She was very good at telling herself things. At midday, she was polishing the wooden frames along the east corridor when she heard footsteps coming from the direction of the kitchen. Not the quick, efficient steps of a man between meetings. Slow, purposeful. She turned. Callum Reeves was walking toward her carrying 2 mugs of coffee. She stared. He held one out. "You looked like you could use a break." She looked at the mug. She looked at him. "Is something wrong with the kitchen?" The faintest line appeared at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. "No, the kitchen is fine." He nodded at the mug. "It's just coffee." She took it. Their fingers did not quite touch, but they were close enough that she felt the warmth of the ceramic pass from his hand to hers like something deliberate. He leaned against the wall across from her. He wrapped both hands around his own mug and looked out the window at the garden. She stood beside the wooden frames she'd been polishing and looked at the same window, and they were quiet together in a way that didn't feel empty. It felt, strangely, like the most honest thing that had happened in that corridor in a long time. "You don't talk," she said, eventually. "Neither do you," he replied. She considered that. "I talk when it's wanted." "So do I." He looked at her sideways. "Most of the time it isn't." She understood that more than she wanted to admit. "How long have you been doing this work?" he asked. She turned the mug in her hands. "Cleaning. Working. Like this. Being somewhere you don't fully belong." The question landed so precisely on the thing she never said aloud that she almost couldn't answer it. She looked at him, and he looked back, and there was nothing in his face but the question, offered without pity, without condescension, just honestly. "Long enough," she said finally. He nodded. Like that was enough. Like he had heard what she meant and wasn't going to push past it. They finished their coffee in silence. When he handed her back the empty mugs to take to the kitchen, he said, without quite meeting her eyes, "You can wear the dress again. You looked like yourself in it." She didn't answer. She walked to the kitchen and set both mugs in the sink and stood there with the water running and told herself for the third time in 2 days that she was reading into things. But the warmth in her chest had a different opinion. That evening, Diane sat on the edge of her bed with the wine-red dress across her lap and the photograph of her mother in her hand. She looked at Ruth's face. That smile. That specific joy that belonged to women who had claimed their own lives on their own terms. "What's happening to me, Mama?" she said quietly to the room. She already knew the answer wasn't simple. Because it wasn't just the way he looked at her or the coffee in the hallway or the sound of her name in his mouth, though those things had each landed somewhere soft in her that she hadn't known was still soft. It was something older than all of that. Something she had been carrying without knowing exactly what it was. She reached into the pocket of her folded uniform and held the photograph a little longer. Then she put both things carefully away and turned off the light. And in the dark, she let herself say the thing she'd been refusing to say since the day she arrived in that house. She deserved more than this. She didn't yet know how much more. She didn't yet know that someone had been working very deliberately to make sure she never found out. But she was about to. She came back on a Thursday, 2 days early. No advance warning, no text to the house, no courtesy call through Marcus. Just the sound of the front door opening at 11 in the morning and the click of heels on marble and the immediate atmospheric shift that Simone Archer produced simply by entering a space. Diane heard it from the second-floor landing and her body responded before her mind caught up, shoulders squaring, hands stilling, face settling into its familiar arrangement of calm. She descended the stairs to find Simone standing in the center of the foyer, sunglasses on, looking around the house with the specific attention of someone who has been away and is looking for evidence of what happened in their absence. "Welcome back, ma'am." Simone did not look at her. She was already turning, already walking, already cataloging. She moved from the foyer to the living room, trailing one finger along the mantelpiece, tilting her head at the sofa cushions, opening the curtains an extra inch on the east window to check the light. "The flowers are different," she said. "The original arrangement was past its peak, ma'am. I don't want things replaced on your judgment. I want things replaced when I tell you they need replacing." Diane said nothing. Simone turned. Her eyes moved from Diane's face to her hands to her shoes and back up. Then she walked past and up the stairs, and Diane followed at the appropriate distance. She should have anticipated what came next. She did not. Simone entered the master bedroom and moved through it with the efficiency of a woman performing an inspection she has done before and expects to find something in. She opened the wardrobe. She checked the bathroom. She lifted the pillow on her side of the bed and set it back down. Then she went to the shared dressing area that connected to the guest wing, where the laundry folding table sat, and she stopped. The wine-red dress was there. Diane had washed it the previous evening and left it on the table while it air-dried overnight, intending to fold and return it to her bag this morning. She had forgotten. In the quiet and the warmth and the thinking about things she had told herself not to think about, she had simply forgotten. Simone picked it up. She held it at arm's length between two fingers the way you hold something you'd prefer not to touch. She looked at the label. She looked at the cut. She turned it slowly. "This is yours," she said. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am. You wore this in this house." A beat. "It was my afternoon off. You were away. I wasn't on the clock. In my house." Simone's voice did not rise. It went the other way, quieter, more controlled, which was more frightening. "You walked around this house in your personal clothing, using the space like someone who lives here," Diane said. The words came out before she caught them. Quiet but clear. Simone went still. She lowered the dress. She looked at Diane with a new expression. Not anger. Closer to assessment. The way a woman looks at another woman when she has just recalibrated what she's dealing with. "Let me tell you something," Simone said softly. Very clearly. "Because I think somewhere in the past few days you have gotten confused about what you are in this house and what you are to the people in it." Diane held her gaze. "You work here. That is the full extent of your presence in this space. You are not a guest. You are not a person anyone here will remember in 5 years. You are help. And the moment you forget that distinction," she let the dress fall back onto the table, "we will find help that remembers it." She left the room. Diane stood alone with the wine-red dress on the table in front of her. She stared at it. Her hands were very still at her sides. Her face had not moved, but something behind her eyes had. She didn't cry. She had spent so many years learning not to cry in front of people who had no right to the tears that the mechanism had become almost involuntary. She folded the dress. She put it under her arm. She walked down the back staircase to her room and placed it at the bottom of her bag and stood at the window looking out at the concrete side path where the delivery trucks came. She thought about her mother's flower shop, about the smell of it, about Ruth Wells standing behind that counter, small and certain, knowing exactly who she was. She thought about a teenage girl who once wrote a lesson plan for an imaginary classroom, who once believed that the life she wanted was not an act of arrogance, but a reasonable expectation. She thought about what it costs a woman to keep herself small for long enough that she starts to believe the smallness is hers. She pressed her hand against the wall. "Stay standing," she told herself. "Just stay standing." That evening, Simone found Callum in the study. She closed the door behind her, which she rarely did, and sat across from him with her ankles crossed and her expression composed into something she had clearly been preparing since the airport. "I need to talk to you about the maid." Callum looked up from his screen. "Diane." The specificity of it made Simone pause. "Just for a fraction." "Yes, her." She folded her hands in her lap. "While I was away, it seems she took some liberties with the house that I think need to be addressed." "What kind of liberties?" "She was in the master bedroom, in her personal clothes, dancing." She let the word land. "And I think she's been spending time with you in ways that aren't appropriate to her position." Callum was quiet for a moment. "She was cleaning the master bedroom. In a cocktail dress?" "I don't know what she was wearing. I know she works in this house and the master bedroom is part of this house." Simone's composure tightened. "Callum, I also know," he said, setting his tablet down, "that you spoke to her in a way this morning that wasn't acceptable." Silence. "I heard it," he said simply. "I was in the hallway. I heard what you said about what she is and what she isn't and who will remember her." Simone's jaw was still. "I was correcting an employee. You were humiliating a person." 2 mornings later, Gloria Reeves arrived. Callum's mother was 67, silver-haired, and possessed of the kind of composure that makes people believe she has never once been surprised by anything. She arrived without announcement. She always did, in a dark car with a driver who had worked for her for 20 years, wearing a coat that cost more than most weddings, carrying a leather bag and an expression that Callum, who knew her better than anyone, immediately recognized. She had come to say something. He met her in the foyer. They embraced without warmth, which was the Reeves family language for love. She looked around the house with the same appraising eye Simone had used, but with different intent. Gloria's eyes weren't looking for evidence. They were looking for what had changed. They found Diane almost immediately. Diane was crossing the hallway with a basket of folded towels when Gloria appeared from the study doorway. Their eyes met. Diane dipped her head politely and stepped to the side. Gloria went still. She watched Diane walk down the corridor and around the corner. And something crossed her face that Callum, watching from the staircase, had never seen there before. Fear. He didn't ask about it immediately. He had learned over 43 years that the best way to get a true answer from his mother was to ask nothing and let the silence do the asking for him. They sat in the formal living room with tea. She always required tea, and she spoke about the board of the Reeves Foundation and a property question in Charleston and the expected topics. And he listened and he waited. Finally, she set her cup down. "The woman who works in your house," she said. "How long has she been here?" 8 months, he said. "Where did she come from?" "The agency we use." "Why?" Gloria's hands were in her lap, very still. She was looking at the window. "Her name is Diane Wells." "Yes." A pause. "Her mother was Ruth Wells, a florist. East Atlanta." Callum looked at his mother carefully. "You knew her mother?" A longer pause. "Your father knew her," Gloria said. The room went quiet in a different way. Callum did not move. His voice, when it came, was measured. "Tell me what that means." Gloria looked at her son for a long moment. The composed expression cracked, just slightly, just enough to let something through that looked like the weight of years of management. Your father and Ruth Wells were involved. Before he and I were married. She ended it. She left and started her flower shop and built a life, and he married me and built an empire, and everyone moved forward. But, Callum said. But Ruth Wells wrote a letter, Gloria said. 2 years before she died. She wrote it to your father. She told him there were things she'd never told him. That she'd been advised, years earlier, by someone, she didn't say who, to keep certain things private. She asked him to make it right before she was gone. Gloria stopped. He didn't. Make what right, Callum said very quietly. Gloria looked at her son. Ruth Wells had a daughter. The silence stretched. Ruth's daughter, Diane, Gloria continued, was named a partial beneficiary in a trust your father established when she was born. He'd known about her for years. He put money in a trust, told himself that was enough, and never told anyone. A breath. When he died, his estate lawyers were instructed by someone, by me, to ensure the trust documentation was set aside pending review. Callum was very still. Pending review meaning never acted on. Gloria did not look away, meaning never acted on. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of everything that had ever been decided by people with power about people without it. Everything that had ever been justified by the words she was fine and she managed and nobody was harmed. She has been cleaning this house, Callum said. His voice was quiet. For 8 months. She has been pressing Simone's blazers and answering to ma'am and she. He stopped. He stood up. He walked to the window. When he turned back, his face had the same expression Diane sometimes wore in the hallway when she thought no one was watching. Not anger. Something steadier and more permanent than anger. Something that had decided something. Who knows, he said. No one, Gloria said. Except the lawyers. And now you. And Diane. She doesn't know. A pause. She was never told. He found her in the laundry room. She was folding linens with the efficiency of someone who has made a practice of keeping their hands busy so their mind has somewhere to go. She turned when he appeared in the doorway, and the expression she put on, the calm, professional, invisible expression, was so practiced and so fast that it nearly broke something in him. Mr. Reeves. Callum, he said. She blinked. My name is Callum. You've been in this house 8 months. I'd like you to use it. He stepped inside. He had a folder in his hand. He set it on the folding table next to the stack of linens, and then he stepped back and put his hands in his pockets and looked at her directly. I need to tell you something, he said. And I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you is not something I can undo for you. I can only tell you what I know and try to make it right. She looked at the folder. She looked at him. My father knew your mother, he said. He told her everything. He told it the way he told hard things, plainly, without softening, with his eyes on her face, so she knew she was not receiving a managed version. He told her about the trust, about the letter, about the deliberate silence that had been maintained by people who had made a calculation about which life mattered more. He told her that the trust held a sum that would require lawyers to confirm the exact figure, but that his first understanding of it suggested it was not small. He told her that this had been set aside, buried, and that a woman had been going to work every morning in his house, pressing blazers, polishing chandeliers, who had every legal and moral claim to a life she had never been allowed to know about. Diane did not say anything for a long time. She stood at the folding table with her hands flat against its surface, the same way she had stood in the kitchen after the afternoon in the master bedroom, holding herself together with the pressure of her own palms against something solid. He waited. My mother wrote to him, she said finally. Her voice was low. Before she died. Yes. She asked him to make it right. Yes. Diane looked at the wall for a moment. Then she looked back at him. And someone made sure he didn't. He held her gaze. He didn't try to soften that. He just let it be true. She nodded once. Slowly. Like she was filing something. Then she looked down at the folder on the table. Is that? Some of it. The lawyers will have the rest. But I wanted you to see something real in your hands today rather than wait for a process. He paused. This is yours, Diane. Whatever is in this, it was always yours. She reached out and touched the edge of the folder. She didn't open it yet. She just stood there with her hand on it and her jaw very tight and her eyes doing something complicated that she was working very hard to control. "I need a minute," she said. "Take as long as you need," he said. "I'll be in the study." He left. She stood alone in the laundry room with her hands on the folder and her mother's photograph in her pocket and the sound of the house around her. The house she had been invisible in for 8 months, and she breathed. She breathed. And then, very quietly, she began to cry. Not the small contained tears she allowed herself at night. Real ones. The kind that come from somewhere too deep to manage. The kind you cry when you understand that you are always worth more and the world just did a very thorough job of hiding it from you. She let herself cry for exactly as long as it needed. Then she wiped her face. She straightened her uniform. She picked up the folder. And she walked out of the laundry room standing fully upright for the first time in 8 months. Word moved through that house the way it always moved through houses where people watch without being watched. By evening, Simone knew something had happened. She didn't know what, but she read it in the architecture of the space, in the way Callum moved, in the way he had spoken to her at dinner with a new kind of finality in his voice, in the way Diane had come to clear the table with something different in her posture that Simone had no precise name for but recognized on an instinctual level. She cornered Diane in the kitchen at 8:45 after Callum had returned to the study. "What did he say to you?" Diane looked at her calmly. "We had a conversation." "About what?" "About things that needed to be said." Simone's eyes narrowed. "I want you to understand something. Whatever Callum said to you tonight, whether he apologized for me or made you feel like you have some kind of standing in this situation, it doesn't change what you are here. And it doesn't change what I will do if you make the mistake of believing otherwise." Diane looked at her for a long, quiet moment. And then she said something she had been holding back for 8 months. "I know what you're afraid of," Diane said softly. "You're afraid that when a man starts to see something clearly, he can't unsee it. You're afraid that if he looks at someone who is honest and real and present, he might start to notice how much of what you've built together is decoration." She paused. "You should be afraid of that. But you should be afraid of it because of what it means about your relationship. Not because of me." Simone said nothing. "I'm giving my notice," Diane said simply. "I'll finish the week. And I'll leave with exactly what I'm owed." She set the dish towel on the counter and walked out of the kitchen. She didn't sleep much that night. She lay in the narrow bed in the servants' quarters and looked at the ceiling and thought about her mother, about Ruth Wells standing in that flower shop smiling like the sun had decided to go where she went. She thought about the girl she used to be who wrote lesson plans for imaginary classrooms. She thought about what it means to have something stolen from you so quietly and so completely that you walk around for years not knowing it's gone. She thought about Callum in the doorway, the coffee in the hallway, her name in his mouth. She thought about what it meant to be seen by someone and to let that seeing be real. She did not let herself want him. She had learned, over a life full of careful management of things that were too large to be safe, that wanting something too much is a way of giving someone else power over you. She was done giving her power away. But she thought about the version of herself she had seen in the mirror in the wine-red dress, and she made a decision. She was going to find that woman again. And this time she was going to let her stay. She submitted her resignation formally on Friday morning. Marcus Osei received it in writing, professionally worded, with 2 weeks' notice. She spent the day working through her list, as she always had, efficient, thorough, unhurried. She pressed the linen. She cleaned the windows. She polished the frames in the east corridor for what she knew would be one of the last times. In the late afternoon, she was finishing the last room on the second floor when Callum appeared in the doorway. She looked at him. "You're leaving," he said. "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. He looked at the room, then back at her. "I understand why. I want you to know that I don't think less of you for it. I think more." She held his gaze. "The lawyers. Monday morning. You should have someone with you. Someone you trust." He paused. "If you need a name, I know people. Good ones. Who don't owe anyone anything." "I'll manage," she said. The corner of his mouth moved. That almost smile. "I know you will. I've watched you manage for 8 months. You're extraordinary at it." She looked at him for a long time. At this man who had walked past her for months and then, in the space of a week, had looked at her like she was worth looking at. She thought about what it would be easy to want. She thought about the difference between what you need and what you deserve and what is actually possible. Callum, she said, his name in her mouth for the first time. He went still. Thank you for telling me the truth. I should have seen it sooner, he said quietly. All of it. She nodded. She picked up her cleaning basket. If you ever want to dance again, he said behind her, don't wait until the house is empty. You don't need permission to take up space. She stopped. She turned. She looked at him one last time with her whole face open, not arranged, not controlled, just honest. Neither do you, she said. And then Diane Wells walked down the hallway, down the back staircase, through the kitchen that smelled of cedar and warm bread, and out into the afternoon light. She stood on the path outside for a moment, the same concrete path she had looked out onto every morning for 8 months from the window of a room that had never really been meant for her. She looked up. The sky was wide and open, and the light was coming in warm from the west, and everything that had been buried was rising. She reached into her pocket and touched her mother's photograph. Then she walked toward the gate. Head high, unhurried, herself.